So how will the Kohler CH270 perform with a performance cam and billet upgrades? So last time around, I installed a Kohler CH270 on the Rascal Light mini bike and installed a 26mm Koso carb. So the bike performed pretty well. It did close to 50 miles an hour and in the 5-second range from 0 to 30, and that's with the stock exhaust. So ARC offers a performance kit for the CH270. So in this video, I'm gonna add my own billet kit with parts that I have lying around here. So I have a Tillotson 265 cam that's already been clearanced for a stroker crank, even though the CH270 doesn't have a stroker crank, but it has a forged steel crank. But it's still nice to have a clearanced camshaft. Then I have the 26-pound springs to go along with the cam. Then I have a 6270 billet rod with the rod bolts and then the bearings. And then I have an ARC billet flywheel with the Hemi taper. So I'm gonna throw all these parts into the CH270 and then we'll see if we can beat 5.29 0 to 30 and 49.41 top speed. And then while I'm at it, I'm gonna remove the governor wheel from inside the crankcase. So the CH270 looks very similar to a Predator as far as the oil sensor hole in the block and then the governor shaft. So I think this thing's gonna be pretty straightforward. Pop off my best chain guard in the world. Just do a quick oil change. All right, this thing looks very similar to a Predator in here. So there's your forged steel crankshaft, and the counterweights do look a little bit different than the cast crankshaft. So this engine even had a factory crank shim. Remove my sweet exhaust off of here. Nice heavy exhaust. And I think this engine has slip-on retainers. That's one cool thing about the ARC kit. It has the automotive style retainers with the stainless steel valve kit that I'll probably upgrade to later if I run a bigger cam in this. But for now, the 265 will be okay. Yeah, this engine has some super light springs in there. So that was probably my RPM wall that I hit last time in the last video. This thing even has its own Kohler spark plug. See what these push rods look like. Pretty much just like a Predator. I mean, they're nice and short though, which is nice because it keeps the valve train light. Let's pull this cam out of here. We'll see what this looks like. So at least it has a metal cam, which is nice. So there's your stock Kohler cam. I mean, it's actually a nice looking cam. That's one thing about this engine. I mean, it's built really well. I don't know what the lift and duration specs are on this, but I can check. At least the lift anyway. You have your lifters, which look really short. Yeah, this thing has a nice light valve train. Here are your rocker arms. Put my stock flywheel off of here. Throw my flywheel nut back on here so I don't hurt that crankshaft. Hopefully I can pop this keyway out of here. Some of these things are stuck in there. We'll see. Oh, that was awesome. That thing came right out. See if I can pull this rod out of here. Rod cap. So here's the forged steel crankshaft. I don't know if it's just me, but this thing feels heavy. Grab this oil sensor out of here. Pull off this governor arm. So now I can go over to the other side and knock out this wheel. So your governor stuff. I have to make sure that I get this washer out of here. So on this hole in the block here, there are a few different ways that I could plug this. I've used the old rod that came out of the hole and just pounded it back in there with success. I've never had any issue with it. Actually, I've cut this in half and then pounded it back in there. Or I could use a 1/4x20 button head bolt, which that's what I normally use. That way I have no issues with clearing the flywheel. Or I could use a 1/4x28 bolt. I've never had issues with any of those options, so I guess take your pick. So I kind of like living on the edge, so I think I'm going to cut this in half and press this back in here, and then use the other half for the top. And it's kind of fun doing it this way. I mean, I've never had a problem doing it this way, but it's kind of fun doing it this way because it gets people riled up on the internet. So I think I'll use this option. So now I'll pop the half of my pin back in there, the pin that came out. So when I do use the pin on this, I leave the clip on there, and that way the pin can't fall back down inside, even though it won't anyway, but still. I mean, it's not gonna fall back in there because it's press fitted. So this top one, I mean, this fits in here nice and snug. Yeah, I tell you what, that one's never coming out. That one there, press fits in there a lot tighter than the side. And like I said, I've used it on multiple bikes and never had an issue. So on the front hole, on the oil sensor hole, I've seen some guys cut the wire off here and use this piece and pop it back in the hole and put a nut on this side, the original nut. Also, I've seen guys use pipe plugs in here, so you get a nice flush, clean look, actually in here and on the top. I normally just tap this with a 7/16 by 14 tap, and with a 1/2 inch bolt, it's not too long where it doesn't hit the counterweights on the crankshaft. I'll run this tap in here, and then throw a little red Loctite on my bolt. So there's your 1/2 inch bolt, barely sticks through there. If you go any longer than that, you'll have a problem with the bolt hitting the counterweight. So now I will pull this wrist pin out of here and throw on that billet rod. Alrighty. Actually, it's a pretty decent looking rod. Now, I was noticing on this crankshaft, man, this is a nice looking crank. I mean, this thing is machined really nice. So you have a billet rod and then a stock rod. I think I'm going to knock off this governor gear on this crankshaft here. No need for it anymore. So I think I'm going to throw some plastic gauge on here on this journal and then tighten this rod on here just to make sure. So this crank looks spot on, about 2.5 to 3 thousandths. I checked this crank in multiple spots and it is spot on. 1.180. Throw a little bit of oil on this stuff. My rod back in here. Throw this crank in here. Torque this down to 170 inch-pounds because I'm using oil. Okay, there we go. 170. Yeah, these lifters are super short. Because like I said, it keeps the valve train nice and light. Install my nice Tillotson cam. Okay, factory crank shim. throw on my homemade crank holding tool so I can install that flywheel. Throw a little valve grinding compound on here. So lap this flywheel in. Okay, that looks pretty good. Clean all this stuff off of here. Stock flywheel key, because I don't need any timing advance. Not with this flywheel. Use the stock Kohler 270 cup because it's a little bit wider than a Predator. Torque this down to 65 foot-pounds. So I think I'll set this coil gap at 60. So on this blower housing, I used the tabs that came on the engine for the gas tank. They used to go across here, and I ground them off on both sides here to make my own tabs for the blower housing. Because on a Kohler, the two top blower housing mounting points are also the tank brackets. So I pretty much got everything back together except for these 26-pound springs that I got to add. But I did find out something cool about the exhaust. A big block exhaust will fit right on here, like a Predator 420, because I have this big block pipe here. So a big block header pipe will bolt right up to this thing. I mean, depending on the minibike frame. So on this one, I'm gonna have to customize this exhaust. I'm still gonna have to cut it and move it for the frame, but at least the flange will bolt up. So that's good to know. You can use the big block exhaust on the Kohler CH270. Throw some string down in this combustion chamber so I don't drop the valves down in here, and that way I don't have to pull this head off. Let me see if I can get these off here with one hand because they're so light. Oh yeah, they just pop right off. So that's a nice light spring there. So you have the 26 on the left and then the stock spring on the right. What a big difference. Okay, there we go. There's one. So you got a valve seal on both sides on this engine. Exhaust and intake. So I got those on there. If you look down in here, you can see that this thing has a nice thin shim head gasket. So I think I'll set the valve lash at 3. So until I get some more pipe, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and throw on the stock exhaust again. And at least that way, I'll be able to tell how restrictive this exhaust truly is compared to the last times the bike had when it was unmodified. I remember on the $100 Predator video, the stock exhaust compared to a header pipe, it was like, I think 9 miles an hour difference or so. So it made a big difference with the header pipe. So we'll see how restrictive this exhaust is. And the cool part about this exhaust is we'll be able to speed around the neighborhood and it'll be totally quiet. So in the last video for top speed, we did 49.41 and then 5.29 0 to 30. So we'll see if we can beat up on that if I can get this thing started. Pretty good. It's still nice and quiet. Now you can tell this thing is quicker. I can tell it's quicker already. That thing's a lot faster. So we'll see if we can beat up on 5.29 0 to 30. so we beat it by about a tenth so far. So let's see if it's faster. So what was the top speed? 49.41. Yeah, it definitely feels like it's going to be a lot faster. It's got a lot of mid-range to it. So this bike almost gained 10 miles an hour running through the stock exhaust. So with the Kohler CH270 stock, we did 5.29 0 to 30 and then 49.41 top speed. Then I added the billet parts and the cam, and we dropped about a tenth, 5.20 from 0 to 30, but gained almost 10 miles per hour. We're pretty close, 58.60. So we almost did 60 miles an hour through the stock exhaust. But this thing feels like it has a lot more mid-range pull to it. So with some gearing and a header pipe, I think this bike has a lot more speed left in it. So in the $100 Predator video, I think the bike gained 8 or 9 miles an hour simply by adding a header pipe. So how much do you think this bike will gain?